Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the FTX Crypto Cup in Miami. It is the 7th and final round of action. A couple of individuals are in competition for first place, namely Pragnananda Rameshbabu and Magnus Carlsen, the world champion and the best player of all time, in my opinion, but also that's a fact. Before we jump into today's video, a couple of things. Lighting is slightly different. My light bulb exploded, so yeah, we don't get the light reflecting off the wall. Also, just realized there's a coat hanger back there. I had some clothes and then I took the thing off and then I left it. Well, I'm just a pig. What can I say? Now, jumping into the games today, we have a lot of exciting different storylines. First of all, will Hans Niemann get on the board? Now, Hans has won a rapid game in basically every matchup except one, and he's been so close so many times. And the curse of the chess speaking for itself at some point must be lifted. Now, we're going to jump into this matchup against Likwang Liam. Liam won the first rapid game. It was looking bleak, all right? Hans played an Italian. He played this little bit of a sideline here with the knight on c3 instead of playing for c3. The knight on c3 covers some squares, and he traded bishops early. It was a very locked position. The players didn't trade pawns for a very long time. Also, if you see what's going on over here, this looks kind of goofy. But again, when the top guys play it, it's smart. When you play it, it's bad. No pawn trades still. Still no pawn trades. 8 pawns per player. We are now nearing the 30th move when finally we have our first pawn trade. 28 moves it took to trade a pawn. Now it's 7 pawns each. Very close position. And white needs to activate these rooks. And the best way to do that is, of course, to play the move f4. Suddenly, Liam is in some serious trouble. Because white is either going to take and then move the queen and then play knight g4 and knight f6. Or white is just going to play f5 in here. Hans decides, well, first, obviously, we have this trade. Hans now has a couple of options. He chooses queen g5. And it takes him a little bit of time because Liam actually tries to, do some stuff on the queen side. And Hans is like, all right, I'm just going to take. So, oh, you're sacrificing an exchange. That's so scary. My attack is still here. So you sacrificed an exchange. I still have this big attack. And Hans keeps rolling. Now, folks, attacks do not always have to end in mate. Attacks can end in a just completely winning position, so Hans starts going back and trying to get a queen trade. Now he starts defending his position, improves his structure, right? Doesn't hang a rook, and immediately we're right back to where we started. The king is safe. We have a threat of getting to the king like this. If you take on g5 in this position, I go, here, you can't stop mate. No, I'm serious. You really can't stop mate. This pawn is a problem for black. So rook g5, rook a3. Liam doing some creative stuff here. If queen takes a3, there's queen f4. That doesn't actually do much because you can still go here and you have various back-rank mate threats. And that's exactly what happens. Queen d2, you go here. The king is safe from checks. And Hans wins the game in an endgame style by getting his king as active as possible. Liam resigns because of the threat of the sacrifice and then winning the king and pawn endgame. Beautiful game by Hans. Beautiful game. And now it comes down to this final rapid game, right? Hans has white again. It is tied 1.5, 1.5. If Hans as much as makes a draw in this game, he goes to the blitz versus Liam. He gets 1 point on the scoreboard, all right? Hans has won a rapid game against all these guys, all right? He can absolutely compete with all these guys. This time he puts the pawn on c3, all right? Liam plays this very combative approach. Hans trades everything and just plays like this. Totally symmetrical pawn structure. You can't be worse here. All right, we're chilling, right? b5. Bishop back to a2. But now Liam starts kind of, instigating. All right, Hans plays bishop b1. It's a little too passive, but black is fine. But now b4. And you see, Hans deliberately did this because he's like, well, I'm a pawn up, right? That must be worth something. But this knight is very delicately preventing this pawn from coming forward. And Liam just continues to ask questions of the white position, just poking and prodding and poking and prodding, and suddenly things are starting to look bleak. Because if Hans gets 2 pawns up, suddenly here comes this pawn. And this is just not going to last in the long run. It's a fake extra pawn or two because they just can't move at all. If bishop takes on e3, you have rook e8 hitting the bishop, knight f4 is on the way. For a brief moment, Hans is up 3 pawns, and yet it's still worse. Look at the eval. That's nuts. So instead of doing all that, Hans tries to trade off some pieces, but that b pawn, guys, that b pawn is going to be a problem, and there it goes. And so what Hans decides to do here is get into an endgame where he gives up the bishop, but he has a lot of extra pawns, okay? He has 3 pawns for the piece. And when everything simplifies down, let's say white loses all the pawns, it's going to be rook and bishop versus rook. That's a draw. Now, you could lose that, but it's a draw. So black is going to have to try to win this game by keeping a pawn on the board, right? You'll notice the way Liam plays this, he has one pawn left. This one pawn is the difference maker. Hans is so close to securing this draw. He constantly threatening a repetition. He's like, bro, you could take both my pawns. Go take that pawn. This is still a draw. Because what's going to happen is you're going to try to check my king. I'm going to dance out this way. And this is exactly what Hans gets. He has a defensive fortress. You'll notice it's minus 1.9. Of course it is, because black is up 2 points of material, a bishop for a pawn. But if you look at Stockfish, it doesn't see a way through. There's no way through. And what I mean by that is, if you give me a check, I go to g4. Okay? You're not going to be able to stop me from trading pawns. And once we get to here, we already talked about this. This is a draw. Hans did it. He secured it. He secured it. He's just going to repeat moves, and that's it. I mean, there's nothing... Oh, wait a minute. Wait a minute. Now if you return to where you were, the rook sneaks behind. Wait a minute. Why is white getting mated? That was never part of the plan. And I think what happened here is that rather than giving this check, he just had to return back here. But instead he gave a check, and suddenly there are some problems, and it goes from bad to worse immediately as king e4 is a mating net. Bishop d6, rook h2 is impossible to stop. Now, of course, it's move 70. The players were low on time. It's not like Hans had like 10 minutes, but he has had the absolute worst luck since that Magnus matchup. I mean, he has won a rapid game in every match. I'm not sure like any of the other players that he didn't win a rapid game against like one person, I think, against Duda. Maybe at most one more, but I think he won a rapid game in every matchup. So we cheer for Hans on the next time he plays. And unfortunately, he will have to live with the consequences of being kind of like the bad boy of the event and saying, you know, the chess speaks for itself. Yeah, people are gonna, like I said, I said this throughout the recaps. I support him, you know. I like the interviews and everything, but spectators are like piranhas, like when they, or like sharks, you know, when they smell blood, oh, they are going, even though they're like, you know, 2,000 points lower rated, and they also have elo anxiety, and they also can barely like play 5 games without being total nervous breakdowns. Like, people love watching other people fail. They love watching other people succeed, but there's something different about when people hate you and want you to lose. There's something a little different about that. So he's made his bed. He's got to sleep in it. Now, the next time he starts, you know, saying things like chess speaks for itself, once he starts winning, oh, he's going to be a problem. He's going to be a problem. So a rough event for Hans, no doubt, but hopefully he bounces back. And now we have a few more matchups to take a look at. Alireza Firouzja versus Livan Ranyan. They drew their first 3 rapid games. The winner of this game wins $7,500 and climbs up the rankings. If Alireza wins, he might get second place in this entire event. So we have a Berlin. We have no Berlin. We're not going to play knight takes e4. We've seen this line a lot in the candidates tournament. A6 and takes, and a very locked game. So now white is trying to get out here, right? He's going to try to reroute his knight. Reroute that knight and play for f4. He's going to try to play this move at some moment. Or he's going to try to play this move at some moment. Really depends on what black does. Well, you see black's fighting back. All right. Now, f4 here looks appealing, but knight c5 just wins a pawn. So you have to protect against that. We have a4. Now f4 actually is a very good move. But Alireza decides, I'm not going to let Levon do anything. Now knight c5. You can't go here. You have to move the knight. Now you can't play f4. So f4 has been stopped, so now we have to go for d4. There it is, knight d7, and now we have to go for c4. You see, Alireza is not afraid, all right? If this pawn structure is in ruins, if this, then after knight d4, I don't know how you're going to defend this pawn. So Levon has very serious difficulties here. Alireza takes on e5, takes on e5 again, and now we have bishop takes h3. So the queen and the knight and the rook all hit the bishop, but the bishop just takes another pawn. Both bishops move out of the way. We keep attacking the queen. White is just up a pawn. Alireza outmaneuvered Levon here in the complications of the middle game and simply is just going to take all his pawns. And remember that move f4 I told you about a while ago? Yeah, here it is. I mean, it only took until move 32, but the game is over. Black does not have any time to go here. Black also doesn't have time to threaten mate because you just take the knight. So black has to play very passively. And the fact that black is extremely passive, combined with the fact that white is up a pawn, combined with the fact that white's pawn is 1 square away from becoming a queen, white is just completely winning here. He plays knight f5 attacking the queen moves, he gives a check, jumps back, and he's just going to he's going knight c7 in a couple of moves. If he's not going knight c7, he's going here. You can't defend all your pieces. Rook e2 played. Queen takes f7 is here, but suddenly after queen g3, it's very difficult to stop mate. So you have to sack the knight. And rather than doing that, Alireza just comes back, pushes his pawn, and wins himself another one, and there's just nothing. I mean, Levon cannot do anything here. An absolutely beautiful final game of Rapid, and Alireza Firouzja finishes the tournament with 15 points out of 21. And he is looking around at the final matchup between Pragg and Magnus and going, I mean, what you guys gotta figure this out, because I'm very close to you guys in the rankings now. And yeah, I mean, that's Firouzja has guaranteed a second place finish for himself. Very, very nice win. He won something like $30,000 to $40,000. Very nice. Of course, there was also a matchup between Giri and Duda. Now, these guys are in about 4th and 5th place. They're not in competition for first, but okay, that doesn't mean that we don't include them in the recap. That seems mildly disrespectful. Duda won the first Rapid game. This is the second Rapid game, and it was a Mikenas Karls English opening by white. Very sharp. Both sides lose knights. Then they trade pawns. And this position has been reached something like, I don't know, 700 times, 800 times in this position. Now here, white usually castles, okay? The idea of castles here is after cd4, cd4, if black takes, knight takes d4, then white gets this interesting position with bishop b2, very strong activity for the sacrifice pawn. Anish plays a move that has been played like 3 times ever, which is just immediately rook b1. And, I mean, it kind of has the same idea, right? The idea being that in this position, you are going to castle. Instead of that, Anish plays bishop b2. Now, I don't know if he got his preparation mixed up. I don't exactly know what happened, but after check, because danger levels, and then blocking the attack, I mean, my engine is certainly weaker than Anish's, but this just looks like a 0.8 advantage to black. Now, I'm sure Anish had some counterplay with bishop a3. I mean, absolutely, right? Like, you're going here. But in this position, Duda plays a move which is not at any of the top lines of the engine. Like, the prep here, I guess, by Anish was something like b6, h4, and then bringing the rook out this way. So that's I guess, what Anish was looking to uncork. Duda plays bishop d7. The move bishop d7 just cleanly gives away this pawn. And then Duda plays g5. Now, certainly this cannot be good because it's not in any of the lines of the engine. But now, white, who knows to play this h4 plan, cannot play h4 anymore because black has the absolutely unbelievable move, long castle. And the idea is just bishop c6, and you just bulldoze white. The king is completely safe. Long castles is completely savage. So to prevent long castles, Anish plays queen b1, okay? Black now plays rook d8, and after this, you just cannot play rook h3. So Duda completely flips the prep around on Anish. Now the position is still, according to the engine, close to equal, but in just a few moves, the position is now completely lost for white. So Anish played a very spicy variation, right? A very technical variation, like in the kitchen, he was cooking something up. But the second he left something on the stove for too long, not only did it burn, the whole kitchen exploded. And now white is just completely lost because his king never got to safety. And I think here, by the way, rook e5 was some sort of inaccuracy, but it was just trending from bad to worst. And Duda just gets to the king. I mean, there is nothing. Queen a2 gets himself the bishop. He has 2 bishops and 2 extra pawns for a rook. The game's just over. It takes him 26 moves, and he wins with black. And he beats Giri, and yeah, nice win for Duda. Picks up $7,500. Short day at the office, and that brings me to our final matchup of the day: Magnus Carlsen versus Pragnanand Rameshbabu. Now, this is a rivalry that has gone back several months, maybe 6 to 8 months. Pragg famously defeated Magnus. And then the story trended all over the place. Then he defeated him again. Of course, I think he's lost to him since, but Pragg is maybe not on the same level as Magnus in classical chess just yet, But I mean, Prague is really making a case of being a top 5 rapid and blitz player in the world. His nerves are bulletproof. He makes mistakes, but my God, is he tenacious. Does he defend like a lunatic? If you combine Prague's rapid and blitz with Gukesh's classical, you would get some sort of superhuman. But of course, they're all extremely strong at all the formats. But Prague, I mean, he's been really making a case for himself. Now, this is their third rapid game. Okay, it begins with a Catalan. Magnus plays this kind of very solid queen c2 line, picks up the pawn on c5, and is just going to try to pressure the queen side, right? So queen c3 looking for a trade. And structurally speaking, as always in the Catalan, things are always seemingly very equal. This is the position after the first 19 moves. Why is white so much better? Activity. White has an active bishop, active rook, active knight, like that's checkmate, so black needs to defend. But I mean, Magnus is going to start poking. He keeps poking. He keeps poking. Bishop c7 forcing the capture. Now if black castles, white is going to go rook d7. And I mean, he just needs a few pieces, right? So Prague has to defend himself. Bishop c5. Knight goes into c8. Look at this. Bishop b6 looking to trade into an advantageous endgame. Now we have bishop versus knight. So Magnus got some imbalance, and he's doing Magnesian things. Prague sacks a pawn for activity, which is the right thing to do. All right? Prague sacks a pawn for activity, and now is looking to fight back. But he's still down a pawn. At the end of the day, he's down a pawn, and he has to defend perfectly. Here, Prague had to find g5, which is an exceptional move. And the point of g5 is that after all this, there's b4, and the bishop is trapped. I mean, g5 would have been savage. But Prague now gets kicked out of the position, and despite still being down a pawn, he doesn't have the activity. Magnus turns on those endgame jets, gets to this endgame, and this, he thinks he has winning chances because he has a passed pawn, and the king can always bolt out to a5 and try to get to those pawns, right? So king f2, Magnus starts pushing back the king, constantly threatening to infiltrate, and at some point he will. And it's just going to be a little bit of a matter of time. There it is. Black just can no longer defend everything. The king has made it, and black is in what we call a Zugzwang. So he's just going to run out of moves. The knight has to stay defending this pawn. The king has to stay in front of the pawn, and that's it. I mean, he's just out of moves. King d5, king c6, and Magnus does a nice job here of triangulating, winning himself the b4 pawn. The reason this is winning is because of a very funny thing. The knight is trapped. That's absolutely tragic. Otherwise, this would probably be a draw because the knight would sacrifice itself. But it takes Magnus 72 moves, but he wins against Prague. And I mean, that looked like it was it. Because going into this matchup, Magnus has 15 points in the overall standings. Prague has 13. If you win in the rapid, you get 3 points. So Prague had to win this mini match in the rapid to win the entire thing. So you would have thought, all right, Prague's just gonna, he's just gonna throw it away, and that's gonna be that. Yeah, but that didn't happen. Because Prague, well, this is the final game of the rapid right here, okay? d4. Prague sits down, he's down 2-1. Magnus plays bishop b4 check, trades, and then plays f5. So Magnus plays a Dutch-style game, bishop d3 and e5. He takes the center, very provocative approach here. We have a totally locked position. Very equal game, very interesting game. All right, bishop back to c2. Prague brings the bishop out here, and he's ready to trade. So he trades and plays the move h4. Prague just looking to imbalance the game. And by imbalance the game, I mean sacrifice his right to castle, get a position that looks completely absurd. Now, here Magnus does something completely nuts. So Magnus can play for a6, b5, right? The typical expansion on the queen side. But of course, first Magnus can do something like bishop d7. And then Magnus can do something like a6. And then Magnus can do something like b5. Right? It's logical stuff. Instead of that, Magnus just plays b5 immediately. And then he plays a6, like in the style of the Benko Gambit. Prague is like, okay, well, I'm just going to be a pawn up now. But, of course, Magnus is still better. He has the attack. He has the better development, the better king safety, right? But he's making it he's giving Prague hope, which is a very dangerous thing to give to a guy who doesn't have a great position. Then Magnus runs into f3, which I guess was part of the plan, but bishop f5, and Prague just begins consolidating. Suddenly, Prague is no longer worse. Here, Magnus can play queen d4 check. But then the king is going to run out to safety. So he plays h5 to prevent g4. Pragg starts trading material and gets to this position. So his king is safe. He has a passed a pawn. He's going to try to win this pawn back quite soon. Knight b5, right? a4. c4. Magnus sacrifices another pawn, but he gets the a pawn. Rook c1, defending the c pawn. Very interesting game, all right? I mean, this is not a type of game that you play when you just need a draw, right? Pragg defending. All right, Magnus takes on f4 and gets d2. The pawn is going. Pawn's going to become a queen. Queen a1. Queen e5 threatening queen e1. Oh my goodness. Is Magnus going to win this game? Takes. All right, it's just... He's pawn up. Bishop d3. And Magnus plays h3. The king is wide open. But h3, looking for gh3 and various queen e1s. Magnus blunders the move knight takes d6. An incredible endgame tactic. Point being, you can't take because of this. And if you give a check, there's no perpetual here. I'm going to play f4. So h takes g2, and now king g1, only move. And when the dust settles, it's Pragg's king who is completely safe in the corner of the board, covered up like this. Pragg just won in the rapid. Oh my goodness. Pragg just won in the rapid. It is now tied 2-2. These two guys have to go to a blitz. Okay? Unbelievable stuff here. Pragg just won to force a blitz playoff. And in the first blitz game, Pragg is playing with the black pieces. All right? Pragg is playing with the black pieces. And for some reason, I've done this 2 days in a row. I think it's because I'm making these recaps without actually drinking a sufficient amount of coffee. There was one more game. That was the first blitz game. I didn't, for some reason, include the second blitz game. So here's your second blitz game. We will get to that in a moment. Magnus begins the first blitz game by playing a very strange Sicilian, right? Bishop d3 and bishop back to e2. He doesn't repeat moves, though. He plays b3. Watch what happens here. Okay, we have the... Why is there... What? This is like when a cow is on a highway. Why is the c5 rook there? Why? And that rook keeps dancing and keeps dancing. And now Magnus is just sacrificing it. He's just sacrificing it, but you can't really take it because after bishop b2, I hit your rook and then I hit this, and there's just too many weaknesses here. Oh, mouse slip. You have to go back here. Instead of that, we have this, and Magnus's pawn structure has been damaged by Pragg, and Pragg has the bishop pair. And what is this rook even doing? Like, this rook is just drunk, stumbling around the bar. Bishop on d5 is strong. Pragg starts firing. f5. All right? Bishop goes to h6. Magnus sacrifices this rook. That rook danced and now died. f4. Queen f4. Queen d2. Queen d3. Hitting all the pawns. Queen f3 check. That's it. Look at this position. Pragg is bulldozing the world champion. He's winning all of his pawns. Queen a6. Magnus just got a little bit too provocative in the opening, and it allowed Pragg to get a very nice position. Now, I mean, look at this. Just 2 extra rooks for Pragg. Just 2 extra rooks. And now all he has to do is consolidate, and yeah, he's just going to sacrifice his rook. That's it. He's just completely winning. It's not even close. h5. Look at b6. Now, of course, mathematically speaking, Magnus has won the FTX Crypto Cup. I explained the way it works earlier. Because they went to the blitz, Magnus gets 2 points, and Pragg only gets... I apologize. Magnus gets 1 or 2 points. Pragg gets 1 or 2 points. But there's no way to catch him anymore. So I guess Magnus just sort of chilled out considering he had won. You know who hadn't chilled out? Pragg. Pragg absolutely dominates the first blitz game with the black pieces. That is now 2 wins in a row. And folks, let me just correctly put in all of the data here. I apologize. I should have done this in advance, but sometimes it's difficult to keep track of 8 games in one recap. Magnus definitely not from Namibia. He's from Norway. Pragnananda T. Oh my God, what a blooper. Did I really hit the wrong key? Oh my goodness. I gotta make recaps after I've had coffee. 2 wins in a row for Pragg. Now, you know the title of the video. So in their final rapid game, final blitz game rather, we have a modern defense, a Peer's defense from Magnus. Bishop c4, queen e2 chosen as the setup by Pragg, who trades everything and just castles. Totally symmetrical position. How on earth is Magnus going to win this with black when Prague is just trading everything and not allowing him to do much? When black has to play for a win, he's going to do something pretty goofy at some point, all right? So far, there's nothing goofy. This is kind of an equal position. I mean, Prague just dominates the only open file on the board. I mean, if you're Magnus, what do you even do here? Like, honestly, right? Do you just accept the draw? No. I mean, you got to play for a win. B5, there it is. All right, now knight A2. Get your bishop out of there, but now I trade. AB. Now, I really don't like the move AB. I don't think it really matters because I'm spectating the game, but something about this move makes me a little uneasy. But Prague is going for a draw. I mean, that's why he's trading all the pieces. He's just like, he's like, Magnus, good luck. Good luck, honestly. Queen knight and 6 symmetrical. You might beat Gotham Chess in this position, Magnus, because Gotham is trash. I'm Prague, though. I don't think that's what went through his head. But it might have been. All right, knight b4, c3. I mean, it's just nothing. It's just, I don't know how on earth you're going to win this position. This is very stubborn play. Oh, this is how you're going to win this position. You're Magnus Carlsen. Maybe Prague is going to do something wrong, right? G3, knight is queen trade. All right, Magnus, go do something goofy. Wait a minute, Magnus is completely winning. Wait, what? Hold on. What just happened? Why is Prague losing the game here? How did this happen? I'll tell you what happened. He played for a draw. I mean, that's what happens. Sometimes when you play for a draw, you play too passively. You allow counterplay. Magnus is just completely winning here. Queen A2 check. You block. I'll take on B3, right? Okay, you can take on E5 with check, but I just go here. This pawn's just going to win me the game. So that's kind of what happens. We have knight E5, though. Queen B1. And, I mean, it's -7. It's -7, right? Queen B2. B3. Queen C3. Prague's just like, all right, I'm going to play a few. I'm B2. That's crazy. Prague, this was not good, man. Totally symmetrical structure. You were talking all that trash about GothamChess losing this position. Prague didn't do that. Was me. I was talking all that trash. Prague's like, all right, I'm gonna sacrifice here. Now, the most insane thing about this position is that there is knight takes f4 here. Like, knight takes f4, it's over. You just win the queen. Magnus takes on b2, and there's f5, and plays queen a1. Queen a1, you cannot take the knight because there's this. G takes f5. E takes f5. Magnus gives a check. King h3. Right, you can move the knight. You have to move the knight to c7 or f8, right? Because if you move to d4, there's probably perpetual with queen e5. So Magnus plays queen c1 and hangs the knight. Magnus forgot this was not mate. Takes, check, and Magnus just resigns. What? What? What just... Even the world champion is capable of... Just knight f4. It's checkmate in 4 moves here. The craziest thing is knight f4 doesn't even necessarily win you the queen. You could just straight up mate the guy on g2. Yeah. Even the world champion is capable of making... I mean, I'm still like actively double checking if he was even playing in this game. Like, I'm making sure I have the right game. This is the right game. I'm gonna go check it even right now. But time trouble makes you do crazy things. And, you know, it also doesn't help that he had already won the event. So, like, but yeah, that's completely nuts. He had like 10 seconds on the clock, but it's still completely nuts. It's just... So, folks, I guess you and Magnus are not so different. You're capable of crazy blunders. Even the world champ is capable of crazy blunders. Now, Prague wins 3 in a row against Magnus, but he doesn't win the event. Magnus is the champion of the FTX Crypto Cup, to the surprise of nobody. Best player in the world in every format, except maybe Fischer Random. Prague and Alireza tie for second with 15 points out of a possible 21. And then it was Kwang Liem. Liem started rough, but he got 4th with 12. Then it was Duda with 11. Anish, Levon with 8. Anish with 7. Hans couldn't get on the board, unfortunately, but hopefully he gets on the board in the next one. Hopefully this only motivates him to work as hard as possible. Folks, it was a lot of fun to make these FTX Crypto Cup recaps for you. Yeah, seems like Magnus has a beef now with the younger generation of players. It's amazing to see them kind of just playing like disrespectfully. You know what I mean? Like just playing for a win at all costs, and it's a lot of fun. And it's fun to see Magnus dominate, but it's also fun to see him mess up sometimes. If I'm being totally honest. That's it. Regularly scheduled programming will resume tomorrow. I hope you enjoyed the recaps. Get out of here.